And we are back. This isn't even an episode of Upward and Onward. This is a little segment, and it's going to be called Off the Cuff. Because what we're doing right now is just off the cuff. We're just having some conversation after an event that we had gone to. It's Thursday night. It is May 17th. We just got back from a quantum computing event. And this is Tim Wheeler, one of my good friends. And he's also a senior software engineer. But Tim, what did you think of the event tonight?
Well, first off, glad to be here.
Hell yeah.
Ship this straight to production.
Hell yeah.
So I thought this event was awesome. It was Debbie Taylor Moore from IBM.
That's right.
Talking about quantum computing. I mean, mind-blowing stuff. I still can't even get the mental model down of what we
talked about.
You know, because regular classical computing is zeros and ones, and quantum computing is qubits and all kinds of other crazy stuff.
Yeah.
That was really exciting, really mind-expanding, and a lot of just interesting stuff that we talked about in regards to cybersecurity and actual quantum computing technology and hardware and all that. So awesome event, very great speaker, and cool crowd as always.
As always. Arnell Millhouse, shout out Arnell. He spearheads a lot of the events in Providence focused around tech, and Tim and I, both being in tech, we really enjoy going to them. And Tim is actually one of the partners for Code Night PVD. So if you guys weren't at the Code Night event in the CIC building, you guys missed out because Tim presented a tutorial on how to create a chat bot integrated with ChatGPT.
That's right. That was a fun night. I think we had a really good crowd there, and from the looks of it that night, it seemed like a lot of people actually got through the tutorial and walked away with a cool chatbot that they could share with family and friends. So
yeah, I
was happy with that, and cool to just work with ChatGPT and OpenAI. And
definitely. So OpenAI and ChatGPT has came up a lot in these podcast episodes, and I'm not going to call out Sam Altman saying that you owe me anything, but Sam, if you see this, I'll send you my address, I'll send you my bank information, and I guess you can just send me some of the proceeds from everything that you guys are doing. That's a joke. But one thing that I found really interesting tonight was how she really put a lot of emphasis on the significance of how early we are in regards to quantum computing and how it's comparable to maybe the dot-com bubble, and how her and some of the people who are her age were in the early stages of that. But for us, it seems like we're not too late, and we might be able to get in on quantum computing and have that knowledge prior to it becoming more mainstream, if you will. What do you think? Are you thinking like after tonight, you're going to go home and research some quantum computing, anything that interests you?
Yeah, I definitely will, to answer the question. And I think there was talks at the end of that presentation that IBM should throw us a hackathon. So, a couple of the Rhode Island developers in the area can just kind of sink their teeth into that technology and get some free pizza.
Yes.
Maybe some beers, whatever.
We're doing it for the pizza and beers, of course.
Exactly. As always. Some things never change. But I really do think it would be exciting to hack on something with, I think it was called QuizKit is their framework that they use for simulating quantum computing, and really to help just form that mental model of like what's going on and what problems we're solving. Because I think even Arnell had mentioned, like, the way that you solve problems with quantum computing, you almost have to forget everything you know when it comes to classical computing.
Yeah.
And that's hard to do, especially if we're just dealing with, we're not literally dealing with zeros and ones in our day to day, but like we're dealing with computers in the classical sense. And so
that's right.
To really change the whole like thought process behind that as software developers, it's challenging. So
that's right.
Seems like a really interesting space to be in. And one of the interesting things that I thought, so cybersecurity to me is always really interesting, but Debbie was kind of going over the different verticals that quantum computing applies to. And one of the interesting ones that I saw, of course, was AI and machine learning. So a lot of the stuff with ChatGPT and quantum computing, there's a lot of overlap there because if you're into software, you would know that AI and ML is like very compute intensive. And, the problems that quantum computing can solve in that realm, I mean, it seems limitless.
That's right.
So
yeah, no, I totally agree. And what's going to be interesting to see as time goes on is our familiarity with quantum computing, because prior to tonight, I don't think we had much exposure to it, as many people probably don't. It's a new part of technology, and it is something that in some ways is a threat, not maybe in the immediate future, but as time is going on, I think that threat is getting closer and closer. And some of the technological advancements that Debbie had told us about, just in regards to the hardware and some of the capabilities of quantum computing, are really eye-opening. I think that's the right word. Instead of saying scary or exciting, I think it's eye-opening. It is exciting as well. But what I want to do is for us to talk through our understanding of quantum computing and how that relates to like traditional computing. So the first thing that we've talked about and we probably can agree on is that with traditional computing, things more or less boil down to zeros and ones, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now I'm going to ask you, what is different about quantum computing in regards to it being different than traditional computing?
Yeah, so I'll try to regurgitate my understanding of this, but classical computing, zeros and ones, on or off, there's electrical current flowing or there's not. And in quantum computing, there's a similar construct of, having zeros and ones. But also there's so those are two states, right? So on or off, 0 or 1. But in quantum computing and with qubits, there's also this third state of things being both on and off. And so back to me trying to form the mental model around this, I'm still not there yet. I think it's really fascinating. And the other aspect of it is in terms of computing, how there's, you have a processor and it's kind of orchestrating the tasks and the different threads that programs are running on. And with quantum computing, from my understanding after this talk tonight, is that it's parallel. So instead of trying to solve all of these problems in a sequential or semi-sequential manner, you can actually solve these problems in parallel. So, I think she gave the example in her slide deck with a maze.
Yep.
And having, I think the example was 256 ways of getting through this maze or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
And so a traditional computer would go one by one. It would go one path, the next path, and so forth sequentially. And with quantum computing, you're able to do all 256 paths at once. And so, yeah, it's still, for me, a lot left to learn on this front, but really just scratching the surface has me buzzing, just really, really thinking about some cool applications and stuff like that. And just where the future of technology is going with this. Obviously, as she had even mentioned, it's still very early, but you have to imagine people have been hacking on this for
years, right?
Years, long time.
True.
And so, if we're still at the beginning stages of this, I mean, it's pretty wild.
It is. I agree. I totally agree. I think that having that concept and conceptualizing it, the more or less what I'm trying to get at is the ability for something to be on and off at the same time is not easy to grasp at first, but I'm hoping, and I think that as we do more of our research, we'll probably get a good understanding of it. Another thing that was really eye-opening to me from the slides that she had shown us was that it seems like, the US is really technologically advanced, but in regards to quantum computing, there are other nations that are also dumping in a lot of money into quantum computing and taking it very seriously. So China, as an example, is a nation that is putting quite some money, quite some change into quantum computing, and in the form of having a quantum internet, she mentioned, or a quantum satellite. I'm curious to see what technological advances come out of different nation states, including the US, and how we're able to move the needle in regards to quantum computing in the future. What else was interesting to you tonight?
Yeah, all of that stuff you just mentioned was very interesting. I always take sometimes these graphics with a grain of salt, especially when it's talking to the United States spends $7 billion, China spends $50 billion. Do you think that someone in the US, even though a lot of financials are public for the government,
sure,
there's definitely some slush fund somewhere,
definitely
pouring billions.
Oh, we've seen it.
just from a military perspective,
Yeah.
Always being ahead of the curve. And so that was interesting. But again, I take those graphics with a grain of salt.
Fair.
The most interesting thing to me was when she was talking about QuantumSafe. So that's the actual like cybersecurity aspect of quantum computing, and like have it being like cryptographically secure from quantum attacks. And really fascinating that a quantum computer can crack an RSA algorithm that's used in traditional TLS. Like when you see the HTTPS padlock in your browser, it can crack that algorithm, that set of private keys. In what was it, like I think 10 seconds is one example, depending on how many qubits your machine has. So obviously only a select few of those exist in the world. Probably Google, IBM, and nation states have those.
Yeah.
The really interesting part, I think, that stuck with me the most, though, was when we were talking QuantumSafe and about how people are harvesting the data right now that's encrypted. So all of our TLS traffic, our HTTPS secure encrypted traffic, if you use a tool like Wireshark to essentially like sniff the network, monitor the network traffic, and like kind of sit in between the client and the server and inspect these requests, any TLS traffic is all encrypted unless you have the encryption keys, these same keys that they're able to essentially decrypt with quantum computing at a very fast rate, like alarmingly fast rate. And so people are harvesting this data. According to her, I mean, this is like really fascinating stuff. They're just sitting on it. They're not even doing anything with it necessarily. But the fact that somebody out there is doing something with this data, who knows, maybe even our own government, other nation states, what have you, harvesting this data so that when that compute power arises, some people already have it, I'm sure, they can, of course, just decrypt it. So like, it ain't safe.
It ain't safe. Hide your kids, hide your wife. No, that's I agree. That is super unsettling. I'm gonna be honest. I feel like a lot of the problems that come out of people talking about things like quantum computing, it's hard to conceptualize, hard to understand. So it's, in some ways, people take it as not being an immediate threat because it's over their head. But going to an event like the one that we went to tonight, it really puts some emphasis on what could be really important in the near future, especially with the advancements in things like artificial intelligence, machine learning, quantum computing. So keep an eye out for that word, quantum computing, folks. If you hear it, I think that it's going to be something that becomes more mainstream once. And once it does become mainstream, it's likely too late because at that point, whatever has made quantum computing become mainstream has already happened. One other thing that I found really interesting was the temperature that the hardware needs to be at for it to run properly.
Very interesting.
Yeah. So if I'm remembering correctly, and Arnell said a certain value, he said like negative
millikelvins or something.
Yeah,
like that.
but like negative 27 million or
I don't remember the exact number.
Yeah.
I think the unit was like millikelvins.
Yeah, which was impressive that he knew that.
Yeah.
That guy.
It's such an Arnell thing to know.
Yeah. But that, right? That's crazy to think about how cool or cold the system and the hardware needs to be for it to do its computations. And, that hardware that we're talking about, it's not something as small as this laptop. It's as big as a car. So for that to be housed somewhere and then temperature controlled, it needs to be, like she mentioned, in like an availability zone, like somewhere that's really safe and secure. But another thing that people might be thinking is that a quantum computing is someone at like a big computer and they're like, typing commands to the computer. From what I learned tonight, and maybe some other people have different understandings, but my understanding is that it's not necessarily that way. And instead, the way that quantum computing is accessed is through the means of a cloud and like more or less, if you will, SSHing over into a certain environment or a cloud, whatever environment, so that you can kick off these computations. Is that your understanding?
Yeah. So I think when she was referring to the cloud, it was in terms of like how quantum computing will be accessible to the general public. And so I think that's the only feasible means of doing that
at
in
scale.
the near future. Yeah, because the things are so huge. Like if you look at, I don't know if you've ever gone to Harvard, but actually I went with Arnell and career devs one time to a CS50 class, and that was amazing, but that's besides the point. They have a museum there with all these old computers, and
that's
like
cool.
the older computers, they're like the size of this room.
That's wild.
And they have like these cool displays and of like punch cards and a moth being on the punch card. That was like literally the first bug.
Wow.
That's like where
that's funny. That's funny.
So, really fascinating stuff. But you have to imagine like quantum computing right now, the actual like apparatus wouldn't fit in this room, and or at least presumably. And so, like as that technology advances, will it become like this device? The same way that this device that's in here is way more powerful than that same computer in the Museum of Harvard. Harvard. So really just like crazy stuff. And so I think what she was getting at was just, at least in the near future, it will mostly be for like businesses to leverage quantum computing. It will be like a cloud-based solution, whereas like they won't have the actual like overhead of setting up their own quantum computing, server center and all that stuff. So, which makes sense. I mean, like otherwise, why bother?
True. Oh, that's my laptop going off. Very true, and a very good way to really bring that to people who aren't familiar with quantum computing and how they can maybe see it in their lives in the near future. I
had a question that I had asked her after the talk, and because we're software engineers and like, so the talk was really interesting from a technical perspective, but how can we take that knowledge that she gave us and apply that in our day-to-day? And so a question that I asked her at the end was, in terms of actual encryption, quantum resistant encryption is what she mentioned. So when you think of like something that's water resistant, it's not waterproof, it's water resistant. So a quantum resistant algorithm, what does that look like? How would a health tech company like the one we work at, how would we go about implementing something like that to our private, data that we need to keep secure?
True.
Because we have so many liabilities in that area and just all this sensitive information. And so she was saying, because I was like, it sounds like it's only for data at rest. So like data in a database or what have you. So she was like, no, it's actually also for data in transit, which is like, TLS right now is like, we're encrypting data in transit, and then as we're saving it in the database, we're also encrypting at rest. And so you have this end-to-end encryption. And she was saying, and I was actually surprised because it sounded like in the talk that there wasn't the means of end-to-end encryption in a quantum resistant manner. And she actually said that companies like AWS already are using the algorithms that came about from like that NIST kind of call for action for like people to come together and come up with these
cool
quantum resistant algorithms. And so AWS is using it, Google, all the big names, like you would imagine, are encrypting data in transit and at rest in their own systems in a quantum resistant fashion already. So
ahead of the game.
My main question around that was like, how is it practical for current systems like this little EC2 server that we're running? How is it going to like have the compute power to decrypt this traffic that is quantum resistant?
Very true.
And so she said it's already being done, and it's already all the big tech's doing it. So all the cool kids are doing it.
All the cool kids are doing it. All right, so we got to do it too. We got to jump off the bridge too. No, I think that's a great measure to take because, like she was saying, sure, maybe the threat isn't 100% apparent right now, but it is still a threat. And really how she was talking about what IBM has in terms of capability with qubits and how over the past 20 years, there were some advancements, but then in the past 5 years, there's been more advancements than there has been in the past 20, and how there are more qubits that can be accessible and utilized at scale in a quicker fashion as time goes on. So, and are able to really decrypt these algorithms. So it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Quantum computing, so cool. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we want to talk about real quick before we peace out of here.
Honestly, I'm looking forward to that hackathon we talked about.
Yeah.
I think for me, I'm a bottom up learner, and like I really need to get into the nitty gritty to really understand things. So really need to get down to the qubit level and build something with it, so I can like form that mental model and really go from there. So
same here. This was a blast. This was great to get Tim Wheeler in the seat. I've been trying my best to get him to sit down in this seat for quite some time, but he's a busy man. He just had a child 6 months ago. Cameron, we love you. Cameron, one day you'll be in the seat too. It probably will be in a different building, but I can't wait to have you. And Tim, again, thank you. I think what could be really cool for some folks to look forward to is maybe once we go to these events in Providence, and if they're close by to this building, we can come back here and give a little recap of what we learned about. It could be helpful for people who are interested in tech or even just hearing about what Tim and I are up to. But aside from that, I think you guys will definitely see Tim on a upcoming podcast episode if I can wrangle him back in here. And Tim, any last words before we get out of here?
Thanks for having me, and upward and onward.
Upward and onward. Peace out.